They hid this secret from you, and that's why you're still broke. Not because you are incapable, not because you are lazy, not because you don't want success, but because from the very beginning a veil was placed over your eyes, a veil woven with fear, conformity, doubt, and the illusion that you were meant to remain in the shadows while others lived in the light. The truth is simple, but it is not easy to accept. The moment you do, your world will shift. You were never taught the first rule of wealth to have a definite chief aim. You were trained to drift, to wait for permission to believe that maybe, someday, luck would find you. But wealth does not respond to waiting. It responds to clarity. If you do not know exactly what you want and exactly where you're going, how can success ever find you? They told you to be realistic. They said, don't dream too big, it'll only disappoint you. But those same voices forgot to mention that every skyscraper began as an unrealistic idea in someone's mind. Every fortune began as an invisible thought. Every empire began with someone bold enough to say, I will. The wealthy were given a different set of instructions. From a young age, they were trained to visualize, to set goals, to expect abundance. You were trained to fit in, play safe, and pray that the system would reward obedience. But the system was never built for obedience. It was built to keep you spinning in circles. They never told you that you're paid not for how hard you work, but for how much value you bring. You can swing a hammer all day or break your back for hours. But if your mind isn't building value, you'll always be paid the minimum. Meanwhile, those who think creatively solve problems and serve others in powerful ways. Money flows to them like a river seeking the sea. But let me tell you something deeper. The real reason you're still broke is fear. Fear is the silent partner of poverty. You fear taking a leap. You fear what others will say. You fear losing the little you have, so you never risk creating more. And that's exactly how they designed it. The system needs your fear. It thrives on your hesitation. It feeds on your self-doubt. The moment you confront that fear, when you stare it down and choose to act anyway, something magical happens. You begin to awaken. You begin to rise. The prison walls around your potential start to crack, and you begin to see the truth. Your environment has been designed to trap you. Look around. What are you watching? Who are you listening to? What conversations fill your day? If it's not about growth, elevation, service, or vision, it's noise. Noise designed to distract you from your mission. Wealth begins with awareness, and awareness demands discipline. You must choose to change what you see, hear, feel, and believe. You must unlearn what they taught you and replace it with the wisdom of those who dared to succeed. And here lies the most dangerous lie they ever sold you, that working harder is the path to freedom. It is not. You were told that if you just grind longer, hustle harder, sacrifice more, you will eventually earn your reward. But look closely, millions work hard their whole lives and retire broke. It's not about effort, it's about direction. Wealth responds not to sweat, but to strategy, to thought, to focus, to the power of an idea fully believed and relentlessly pursued. It is not the labor of the body, it is the labor of the mind that moves mountains. The wealthy are not special, they are not chosen, they are simply awake, and you can awaken too. You must reclaim your power, you must say, no more drifting. You must decide that from this moment forward, you will take control of your mind, your actions, and your destiny. Because once you learn the secret, that wealth is not out there but in you, nothing and no one can stop you. They hid this from you. But now you know. And once you know, you can never go back. You were not born to be broke. You were born to build, to rise, to lead, and to leave behind a legacy that echoes for generations. It begins the moment you decide it does. And that moment is now. Most people live their entire lives without ever realizing that the missing piece, the true cause of their struggle, their frustration, their financial hardship is not luck, talent, or circumstance. It's the absence of a clear, definite purpose. Without a definite purpose, the mind drifts. It hops from one thing to another. It follows distractions. It reacts to life instead of designing it. And that's exactly why so many people remain broke. Not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. They're chasing jobs they don't love, following dreams that aren't theirs, and surviving instead of thriving. Not because they're incapable, but because they lack the one thing that creates unstoppable momentum: clarity of purpose. When a person discovers their definite purpose, something that sets their soul on fire and aligns with their values, they become magnetic. Their thoughts become sharper. Their energy increases. They start waking up with intention. Obstacles that used to stop them now become stepping stones. Their conversations change. Their decisions are no longer random. They are deliberate, precise, and focused on the destination they've chosen. Wealth, in all its forms, begins to flow toward this kind of person, not because of magic, but because of alignment. When your actions and your purpose are in harmony, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop entertaining doubt. You begin to move with certainty, and that certainty attracts people, opportunities, and results. The world has trained you to believe that purpose is a luxury, that it's something only the privileged get to think about. That's not true. Purpose is your responsibility. It's not a distant dream. It's a decision you make. It's a commitment to choose one thing that matters deeply and pour your time, your heart, and your energy into it without apology. That is the root of transformation. That is how the great ones built empires from nothing, not with perfect plans, but with purposeful focus. A person with purpose doesn't ask if success is possible. They assume it, and they work until it's visible. A person with purpose doesn't chase money. They attract it by becoming the kind of individual who creates value. The world may not hand you success, but it will always respond to purpose. Because purpose is power, and once you lock into it, the universe moves out of your way. From the very beginning, you were surrounded by voices that taught you to play it safe, stay in your lane, and keep your dreams within reach. You were rewarded for following instructions, not for asking bigger questions. You were told to be practical, not powerful, to fit in, not stand out. This wasn't an accident, it was programming. And over time, that programming taught you to think small, to expect less, and to believe that a modest life was the best you could hope for. But thinking small is a trap. It limits your vision, shrinks your self-worth, and convinces you that greatness belongs to someone else, not you. Everywhere you turned, the message was subtle but constant. Don't be too ambitious. Don't aim too high. Don't get your hopes up. So, instead of setting bold goals, you settled. You shrunk your desires to match the opinions of others. You measured your potential by the size of your problems, not the strength of your imagination. And while the few who were taught to dream big moved forward, you stayed where it felt safe, comfortable, but unfulfilled. Not because you didn't want more, but because no one showed you how to believe it was possible. But here's the truth they didn't tell you. The size of your life will always match the size of your thinking. If you think small, you will live small. If you think average, you will attract average. But when you begin to think in terms of expansion, creation, and contribution, your life begins to change. It's not just about visualizing big dreams. It's about training your mind to believe that those dreams are not only possible but necessary. Thinking big means refusing to let your past dictate your future. It means refusing to accept the limits others placed on you. Your mind is a tool. It becomes whatever you allow it to become. The wealthy, the innovators, the leaders, they all think on a different level because they broke free from the programming. They rewrote the script. They challenged the ideas that were handed to them and chose to believe something better. That kind of shift doesn't require permission. It requires a decision to believe that you are capable of more, that your life can expand, and that your future can be radically different from your past. Thinking small will keep you broke, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. It creates fear, doubt, and hesitation. But when you decide to think big, when you stretch your vision beyond your current conditions, you begin to activate power within you that has been asleep for years. You begin to move differently, speak differently, attract differently. The world starts to respond to the new you. So reject the programming. Reject the lie that says you're only meant for survival. You were not created to live a limited life. You were designed to grow, build, influence, and rise. It all begins with a shift in mindset. And once you decide to think bigger, there is no going back. There is a law operating in your life, whether you acknowledge it or not. A universal principle as consistent as gravity. It's called the law of compensation. Most people never hear about it, and those who do often misunderstand it. This law simply states that you will be compensated in direct proportion to the value you bring to the world. Not by how long you work, not by how hard you sweat, but by the depth of service you provide, the quality of problems you solve, and the uniqueness of the skills you bring to the table. This truth is not a matter of opinion, it is a principle deeply woven into the very structure of life. You see, we live in a results-based universe. It doesn't reward intention. It rewards action, impact, and contribution. People often work long hours, give their energy day after day, and wonder why they remain stuck financially or unfulfilled emotionally. The reason is simple: they're focused on effort, not on increasing value. Value is what the world exchanges for compensation, financial, relational, or otherwise. And value is not measured in sweat, but in solutions. If you solve bigger problems, if you become a person of greater use, then your compensation naturally increases. But this is not what you were taught. You were trained to trade time for money, to believe that effort alone equals success. That model might help you survive, but it won't help you thrive. True wealth begins when you stop asking, "How can I earn more?" and start asking, "How can I serve more?" The moment you focus on elevating your skill, deepening your knowledge, and enhancing the experience of others, you align yourself with the very law that governs success. Compensation isn't always immediate, but it is always just. You might plant seeds for years before the harvest shows up, but the law never forgets the seed you planted. Every act of service, every moment of genuine contribution, every step of disciplined growth, it compounds. It builds unseen momentum until the results show up in visible form. That's when people call it overnight success, not realizing the law was working the entire time behind the scenes. The people at the top didn't just work harder. They worked smarter. They focused on impact, on excellence, on building systems, ideas, and offerings that serve people in a meaningful way. The world simply responded to the value they created. That's how the law works. And the good news, it doesn't play favorites. It doesn't care where you're from, how old you are, or what you've been through. It responds to growth. It rewards those who build themselves and then use what they've built to uplift others. So if you're not seeing the rewards you desire, don't beg for more, become more. Increase your value, sharpen your skills, deepen your understanding. Learn to solve higher level problems. The more people you serve, the more abundance flows to you. That's not a trick. It's not a gimmick. It's the law. The law of compensation is real. Align with it, and your entire life will change. Fear is the most subtle, most destructive weapon ever used against human potential. It doesn't need bars or chains to imprison you. It only needs to whisper doubts in your mind. Fear holds more people back from success than failure ever could. You weren't born with fear. You were taught to fear. From a young age, you were conditioned to fear rejection, fear risk, fear loss, fear judgment. And slowly, that fear began to shape your decisions. Not based on potential or purpose, but based on avoiding discomfort and failure. Fear has been used to control minds for generations. Institution systems, even well-meaning families, used fear as a form of protection, but in doing so, they handed you invisible handcuffs. You started believing that staying safe is more important than aiming high. You were told to take the secure job, not the fulfilling one. You were advised to save instead of invest in yourself. You were warned that stepping outside the comfort zone could end in disaster. But what they didn't tell you is that the greatest risk is never taking one. Fear disguises itself as logic. It convinces you that playing small is wisdom. But in truth, fear robs you of the very growth you were designed for. The path to freedom is always through fear, not around it. Every successful person you admire faced fear, but they chose to move forward anyway. They were afraid, but they acted. And through that action, fear began to lose its grip. The problem is, most people wait for fear to disappear before they act. That day never comes. You cannot destroy fear by waiting. You destroy it by doing, by leaning in, by proving to yourself that your courage is stronger than your hesitation. And every time you act in the face of fear, your power grows. You begin to take back your mind, your will, your future. Understand that fear is a tool. It's not always the enemy. It can serve as a signal, but it was never meant to be your master. Fear should not make your decisions. You should. When you let fear dominate your choices, you forfeit control of your life. And that's exactly how the system keeps you stuck, afraid to leap, afraid to fail, afraid to shine. But once you realize that fear is just a programmed thought, something learned, not a permanent truth, you can begin to dismantle it. You can begin to replace fear with faith, with clarity, with discipline. You can start moving toward your vision, even when your hands are shaking. And that's when you step into real freedom. Not the kind the world gives you, but the kind you build within. Fear is used to silence bold ideas, to stop people from breaking the mold, to keep them predictable and compliant. But you were not born to live a limited life. You were born to rise, to build, to become something greater than fear ever wanted you to believe. You must decide that fear no longer has the final word in your life. That from this moment on, fear may speak, but it will not lead. Every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you act despite fear, you break a chain. And little by little, you reclaim the life that was always meant to be yours. Fear loses power when you confront it. You gain power when you rise above it. That is the beginning of transformation. That is the path to freedom. Most people don't realize that the greatest threat to their potential isn't their lack of talent or opportunity. It's their environment. The truth is, your environment plays a more powerful role in shaping your financial destiny than you've ever been told. The people you surround yourself with, the media you consume, the conversations you engage in, the habits you repeat daily, all of it silently programs your mind. And if your environment is filled with limitation, scarcity, negativity, and small thinking, then it becomes almost impossible to rise above it, no matter how motivated or intelligent you are. You've been placed in surroundings that normalize struggle. You've been trained to think it's normal to live paycheck to paycheck, to drown in debt, to believe that wealth is for others. You hear it in the jokes people make about money. You hear it in the cautionary advice passed down from those who never broke free. You see it in how your friends talk more about problems than possibilities. And slowly, without even noticing, your mind begins to absorb those beliefs. You begin to accept average as acceptable. You stop questioning the system, and you start adjusting to it. This isn't just about financial poverty, it's about mental poverty. When you're in an environment that lacks vision, ambition, and purpose, it becomes difficult to think beyond your circumstances. You become what you're around. If you're constantly surrounded by people who complain, blame, and make excuses, it becomes easy to do the same. If your daily input is fear-based news, shallow entertainment, and toxic conversations, then your output will reflect that energy. And while you may feel a spark of inspiration now and then, it will be drowned out by the noise of your surroundings unless you intentionally rise above it. The wealthy understand this truth. They build their environments carefully. They guard their space. They choose to spend time with people who challenge them, inspire them, elevate their thinking. They invest in education, in mentorship, in books, in spaces that spark creativity. They curate their surroundings to support their success, not sabotage it. You must do the same. You don't need to abandon everyone or everything, but you do need to evaluate honestly. Are the people around you pushing you forward or pulling you back? Are your habits helping you grow or keeping you stuck? Are your routines building your dream or feeding your doubt? You cannot plant the seeds of greatness in poisoned soil and expect a harvest. Changing your environment starts with intention. It starts by eliminating distractions, reducing exposure to negativity, and choosing to place yourself in spaces that nurture your potential. It could mean spending more time in silence, more time reading, more time with mentors, even virtual ones. It could mean letting go of certain friendships, limiting time on social media, or waking up earlier to take control of your day before the world's noise kicks in. This is not easy, but it is necessary, because your environment will either be your prison or your platform. And if you don't design it intentionally, it will be designed for you, by a society that profits from your distraction, not your growth. So ask yourself honestly, is your environment making you richer in mind, in soul, in vision? Or is it keeping you broke, not just in your bank account, but in your belief system? The change begins when you take ownership of your surroundings. Because once you shift your environment, you begin to shift your life. And that's when the breakthrough happens. From the moment you were old enough to understand words, you were told to work hard. You heard it at home, in school, in your community. Work hard and you'll succeed. It became the anthem of your life. But what they didn't tell you, what they conveniently left out, is that working hard alone isn't the key to wealth, freedom, or fulfillment. In fact, working hard without thinking right is one of the fastest ways to stay stuck in survival mode. It's not that effort is bad, but effort without direction is just exhaustion. You were taught to labor, but not to think. You were told to grind, but never shown how to align your actions with a higher vision. And that's why so many people work day and night, year after year, and still remain broke, mentally, emotionally, and financially. Society rewards hustle. It glorifies being busy. You see it everywhere, people taking pride in being overworked, sleep-deprived, burned out, as if that's a badge of honor. But look deeper. The janitor working double shifts, the delivery driver hustling in traffic, the factory worker breaking their back. Are they all poor because they don't work hard? No. They're some of the hardest working people on earth. The problem isn't the work. It's the lack of strategic thinking behind the work. You were never taught to leverage your mind, to think in terms of systems, to focus on value creation. You were taught to trade hours for dollars, not ideas for wealth. And so the cycle repeats. You work more to earn more, but time is limited. Eventually, you hit a ceiling. And no matter how much effort you give, the outcome barely shifts. That's because wealth responds to leverage, to innovation, to problem solving. It flows to the people who think at a higher level, not just to those who push harder. The truth is, every wealthy person you admire got there not by working 100 times harder than you, but by thinking differently than you were taught. They focused on solving bigger problems, creating systems that operate even when they sleep, building assets instead of chasing wages. They understood that the most valuable tool in the world is a trained, focused, and expanded mind. And the tragedy is that this kind of thinking is rarely taught in schools or homes where financial struggle is common. Instead, you're taught obedience, not vision, memorization, not imagination, survival, not strategy. To break free from the cycle, you must unlearn what you've been told. You must stop glorifying labor for the sake of labor and start honoring intelligent effort. Effort that is guided by a bigger picture. Ask yourself, what am I building? What problem am I solving? How am I using my mind to create value, not just output? Because if all you do is work hard without thinking right, you'll spend your life building someone else's dream while yours collects dust. This isn't about working less. It's about working smarter, about pausing to think before you act, about building habits, skills, and a mindset that multiplies results. When your thoughts are aligned with purpose and strategy, your work becomes exponential. You produce more by doing less because your thinking sharpens your direction. So question the programming. Refuse to be just another overworked, underpaid person trapped in the illusion of progress. Learn to think differently. Learn to create. Learn to lead. Because in this world, those who think right rise, while those who only work hard stay stuck. It's not just your effort that matters. It's the quality of your thinking that determines your future. Now that the curtain has been pulled back, the truth stands before you. Clear, undeniable, and powerful. The reason you've remained stuck, broke, or unfulfilled isn't because you lack ability, worth, or ambition. It's because you were handed a map that was never designed to lead you to success. You were taught to drift without direction, to fear change, to think small. and to work hard without ever asking if the ladder you're climbing is leaning against the right wall. But now you know better. You've learned that success begins with a definite purpose, a clear mission that ignites your mind and focuses your energy. You understand that your thinking has been programmed to shrink, not to soar. You've seen how compensation flows to those who create real value, and that fear is not your enemy unless you allow it to rule you. You've realized that your environment can either elevate you or imprison you, and that most of what surrounds you was designed to keep you average, not extraordinary. And above all, you now know that thinking right is more powerful than simply working hard. Strategic thought builds empires. Blind effort only builds fatigue. This is not the end of the message. It's the beginning of a new mindset. From this point forward, you are responsible for what you do with this truth. You can go back to the noise, the distractions, the excuses, or you can step forward into the life you were truly meant to build. The choice is yours. No one is coming to save you, but everything you need is already within you. It's time to take back your power. It's time to stop surviving and start designing. It's time to stop waiting and start becoming. Your future doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. Choose wisely. Choose now.